Hi, everyone. Welcome to our October Facebook Live event where I take questions from my followers and constituents and indeed people right across the country on issues that they're concerned about that are happening on the federal scene. Now, we have had a busy week already, including the vote on the throne speech, which did pass because the NDP has crawled right into bed with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to prop up this corrupt Liberal government and continue on the path of cover-ups and making sure that they're not being transparent and accountable to all of us as Canadians. The vote passed 177 to 152 with the NDP supporting the Liberals. Now, I know I spoke on the throne speech on Monday, and that was broadcast live as well. And I know there are some questions about some of the comments I made. Let me just say this, things that I want to dive into a little more detail, but I just didn't have time. I only had 10 minutes to speak, and some of the points that I want to raise there, I've raised in the past. But, the big issue that a lot of people are we're asking about is the economic destruction that could occur under this Liberal NDP coalition, the amount of money that has already been spent and a deficit that's already shooting right past $350 billion. And just to put that $350 billion deficit into, I guess, context, last year, before COVID, the entire budget for the government of Canada was $350 billion. So they have spent twice as much as what we did last year. And that is unheard of in Canadian history. And that is racking up debt that is now going to go right over $1 trillion. And we're not even done yet. We're only probably halfway through this pandemic, and there's a ways to go yet. So we need to make sure that we keep Canada working, that we keep businesses afloat. And we do that by keeping the doors open while trying to manage the public health impacts of COVID-19. And that's why wearing masks are so important. Now, just also to remember, one of the things that I took exception with in the speech from the throne was Justin Trudeau saying that the government of Canada is in a better position to shoulder the debt that Canadians can't afford to take on themselves. Well, who does Justin Trudeau think actually is going to be holding on to this debt? It's the taxpayers of Canada. It's each and every one of us. And we know that when government debts run up uncontrollably, what we're witnessing right now, that impacts all of us because we know that it creates hyperinflation because of the excess money that was put into circulation. And we know that as a fact because right now, when Canada is needing to borrow money, the bulk of it is coming from the Bank of Canada in new dollars that are being printed. So that's going to devalue our dollar. That is going to put us into hyperinflation, and that will ultimately increase interest rates. And so that means not only will it get more expensive for the government of Canada to borrow this money, it's going to get expensive for all of us to have any borrowed money, whether it's our mortgages, whether it's car loans, whether it's other consumer loans. That debt will get more expensive for each and every one of us to service, never mind the government of Canada. And just to, again, put things in perspective, up until this crisis started with COVID, we had debt servicing that was in excess of $30 billion a year. Well, that's twice as much money as the province of Manitoba has in their annual budget. $30 billion a year is more than what we spend every year on national defense. So, there is a responsibility on government to bring forward, budgets and economic forecasts and properly carry out their fiduciary duty to each and every one of us as taxpayers. So, we look at the budget. There is none. There isn't a budget to actually deal with because, Marno and now Chrystia Freeland refused to table a budget. And as of this weekend, this will be the longest time that a government in the history since Confederation has gone without having a fiscal plan in place. And I know that Chrystia Freeland doesn't want to try to put together a forecast and put together proper budgetary items on how we go forward because of the unpredictability of how bad the economy may get hit, and look at how badly we could all be, or how badly their forecasts and their budget numbers could be off. But I think what we're still need is some responsible governance, and that's not happening under the Liberals. Not thinking of us ever dreamt that they were going to be responsible as a government anyway, with Trudeau 2.0 running the show, and we know what Trudeau 1.0 did. And I always say, if you look back at his father and the fiscal mismanagement under him and the huge national debt that we racked up at that time, and the fallout in hyperinflation and high interest rates. I know I borrowed money for the first time back in the mid 80s when I bought some from my first farmland. That mortgage cost me over 21.5% interest rates. And, right now, most of us are enjoying these low interest rates of 3, 4, 5%. Well, that's all can change dramatically because of reckless spending and a lack of budgetary oversight by the Liberals. And of course, without a budget, then how can we have fiscal accountability as well as parliamentary accountability to both taxpayers and to us as parliamentarians? This week is also, I just want to make mention of it, and I'll be putting out a statement later about Mental Illness Awareness Week. So there will be a statement out, I believe, tomorrow that I'll be putting out, talking about making sure that we keep each and every one of us in our thoughts, checking in with our friends, doing buddy checks. I think about all the time the Canadian Armed Forces, and making sure that our mental health is good, especially during these types of crises where we are not socializing to the same levels that we have in the past. And let's also, before I get into the questions, remember why we had to have a throne speech. It's because Trudeau prorogued Parliament. And why did he prorogue Parliament? Because Trudeau wanted to stop the investigation into the WE scandal. And we had multiple committees that were looking into how the sole source contract come about, how it was going to be used to benefit the Liberals and their Liberal friends. And there was a demand for production of papers. All of that fell through. And now we need to continue to go back to looking at this WE scandal. No surprise here. The Liberals now have the NDP to help them do the cover-up. So the NDP and Jagmeet Singh are now going to be complicit in stopping the investigation, to stopping the transparency that should be automatic in the government of Canada and in Parliament. And so it is disgusting to know that the NDP would rather help the Liberals push everything behind the curtains rather than face the electorate. That is unfortunate, but not surprising. Now, we've had a lot of questions come in. As most of you know, I do an e-newsletter that goes out to all our constituents on a monthly basis. And we've had a lot of feedback on Twitter and on Facebook over the last couple of days over what questions to deal with. So I'll start off with kind of the most frequently asked questions, and there's a variation. But I can tell you that we do get a lot of questions about seniors and seniors struggling to get by, and how living on fixed incomes of the CPP, OAS, and GIS just isn't enough, and how often that the indexing for inflation is slow and very minor, and most of people see that as an insult. And I got to tell you that first and foremost, we have to pay our respects to all seniors, because you are the ones that helped build our country and got it to be a great nation that it is now. Your contributions need to be recognized. And we believe as conservatives that we want to improve the well-being of and the financial security of our seniors. So we'll continue to hold the Liberal feet to the fire. Now, there was some commitments in the throne speech from the Liberals that was read out, and they want to, bring about some criminal code amendments to penalize those that neglect seniors in long-term care. We know that they are working at having a new national set of regulations and standards for long-term care, even though it's not federal jurisdiction, that is entirely provincial jurisdiction. They also want to look at increasing old age security to help seniors as they turn and get up to that 75 years of age, and boost the survivor benefit as well under CPP. So, we want to make sure that the health care of seniors, especially those living in social isolation right now because of COVID-19, is being addressed. As Conservatives, we want to make sure that things that weren't addressed in the throne speech, we can start asking the questions about now. And our healthcare shadow minister, Michelle Rempel-Gardner, has been doing just a great job. And we know that there is no clear plan, including for Canada seniors, through this pandemic, and how that their health is going to be protected through the concerns that we have with COVID-19. And really, if you read the throne speech, and this is true for seniors as it is for almost everybody else, it's a rehash of old Liberal promises. Some of them going back to Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien, like bringing back a national child care strategy. Every election I've ran in since 2004, that has been a centerpiece of every Liberal campaign, and has never been acted upon by the Liberal government. So, we need to continue to deal with the real issues around financial security, which Conservatives believe we have to support seniors with, as well as making sure that the issues around long-term care are properly addressed, including from a legality of potential abandonment or negligence, and how those things are properly prosecuted and dealt with through policy. Now, Judy asks, is it true that the Liberal government stopped Manitoba from getting fast testing for COVID? I can say that is true. And the real issue is that Manitoba applied for a couple of fast tests to take place. They were ready to put it into place. And the Liberals said no. Finally, just in the last week, the Liberals approved their very first rapid test, called the Abbott Id now. This is an antigen test, and it works within 30 minutes. And they're looking at approving a second one. The sad reality in all this is that the United States and our European partners have been using rapid tests for months, and we're only getting around to it now. Those long lineups that I'm seeing in Selkirk and Winnipeg and across Ontario and indeed across the entire country, where people are waiting to go in and get tested, can be shortened up so much faster if we had rapid testing. And if we have rapid testing, we can actually get to a situation where we can do multiple tests on individuals to get them out of self-isolation quicker. And that's exactly what's happening in Europe right now, is that if you have 2 negative tests within 4 or 5 days, and definitely within the first 7-8 days, you can be out of isolation and considered safe. So those are the things that need to start taking place, just so that we can get back to a more normal life and opportunities for business expansion than what we're seeing right now under the current strains that we have. And who wants to sit in lineups for hours on end and may not even get through in any particular day? But the Liberals, how we say, it doesn't matter what they do, it's always about dither and delay. And so this is really an opportunity for all of us, to do more. And I must say that we did send, as Manitoba Conservative Caucus, Manitoba MPs in the Conservative Caucus, that we sent a letter to the Minister of Health calling on them to reconsider the bans on some of the other technologies that are out there, and allow the provinces the ability to go out there and purchase their equipment that they need so that they can facilitate that rapid testing and better diagnose and control COVID-19. Now, Bonnie asks, what is the Conservative plan to move reconciliation with Indigenous peoples forward, settling land claims and ensuring equal access to clean water, health services, and education? I'm got to say, first and foremost, I am proud of the work that I've done on this on behalf of First Nations in our riding, particularly Peguis First Nation. When we were a government, we settled the treaty land claim with them, as well as the illegal surrender of St. Peter's Reserve. And that has provided millions of dollars into them being able to expand the lands that the First Nation community holds, that Peguis holds, as well as I've been working with Broken Head Ojibwe Nation and their TLE, which has been finalized as well. The lands are being designated, and of course we want to make sure that we see those lands get transferred as quickly as possible into reserve lands. So looking at those opportunities for First Nations and working alongside the neighboring communities and the opportunities that presents. Also, I just put a letter in to the ministers for fisheries and oceans, as well as Northern Affairs and the associated ministers for Indigenous Affairs, Indigenous Services. And I'm working with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs on how they can get control of the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, a draconian Crown corporation that AMC is in a better position to take over and run and modernize so that it's better able to market the fish that are caught in Manitoba and across the prairie region. And I can tell you that fishers across the riding are very supportive of this. Looking forward to seeing how this all comes together. With Grand Chief Arlene Dumas has worked very hard on this and bring about the appropriate economic business plan for FFMC, how that would work for First Nations, for Métis fishers, for non-Indigenous fishers. I know that the Pioneer Fishers Association and the South Basin of Lake Winnipeg are on side and supportive. And it's all about providing alternatives and in an open, thriving, competitive marketplace and making sure that everybody can benefit from it. So it's making use of an excellent resource that we have here, especially our pickerel, our whitefish, our sauger, and other great fish species that we have in Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, Lake St. Martin, as well as through all of our northern lakes, and how those communities can continue to have that as a commercial venue, as well as it's something that's very cultural for all Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishers. It's part of our way of life out here in Manitoba, and we want to make sure that we provide every way possible that the government of Canada can empower our commercial fishers and their families and their communities. Now, Kelly asks, because of the enormous deficit being incurred because of COVID, what can we expect in terms of fiscal stability across this crisis once this crisis ends? Increased taxes, service cuts, or other measures? So let's see. We know that almost always after the Liberals make a mess, people expect Conservatives to come and clean it up. As a Conservative, I can tell you I'm against increasing taxes. We do want to look at government programs and expenditures, but ultimately we have to get back to increasing our economy. And the way we increase the size of our economy, increase our GDP, is to stop the Liberals from putting a halt to resource development and other manufacturing opportunities in this nation. And we've seen, billions and billions of dollars flee the country. And a lot of people often assume that the dollars that have fled the country have been foreign investment. I can tell you a lot of it is domestic investment. And so when we have people running away because of the No More Pipelines bill, the tanker bans on the West Coast, the stopping of pipelines in through parts of this country, if we can't get the product to market, don't expect anybody, whether they're Canadian or foreign ownership, to put dollars into our economy. And don't expect them to invest when they have such a hostile government in place in Ottawa. And so the Liberals continue to put up Stonewall after Stonewall and making sure that we can't create those jobs and opportunity. Now, there is more to the economy than just resources. We know that. And so that's why we want to see investments in kind of the pillars of our economy, which is agriculture, natural resources, and energy. But also, let's never forget that Canada is a great manufacturing nation, that it is small business that supports our communities, that they are the bedrock and the backbone of our overall economy, creating most of the jobs in this country. So we need to support those small businesses. We need to support those job creators. And you don't do that through increasing taxes. It's about getting rid of red tape and getting out of their way and let them do the business that they can. Charles asks, will the official opposition, meaning us as conservatives, acknowledge the effects of mefloquine, provide outreach and an independent inquiry? Now, and then it goes on, mefloquine veterans continue to be stonewalled and gaslighted under the current government on mefloquine. We need a statement from the leader of the opposition on this, and what are your thoughts? So I can tell you that Aaron O'Toole has been working on this from the time that he was Veterans Affairs Minister in the Harper government. He had a policy during the leadership race. I know that we will have a policy going forward as we develop our platform. But yeah, mefloquine, the impacts on our veterans, on those that are currently serving. And just for everyone to know, mefloquine is an anti-malarial drug. It's a drug that you only need to take once a week rather than every day, which the other malaria pills are required. And so originally it was mandated that whenever our armed forces were serving in countries where there was malaria or potential for malaria, to take mefloquine. And unfortunately, it has come with, not for everybody, but a large percentage of our serving members and our former serving members have experienced a psychotic behavior, and it has been linked to the situation in Somalia that we're all familiar with. So, there is a real need to, well, first of all, why is it still being administered? And I can tell you it's now on a voluntary basis, but it's still available. And secondly, we got to make sure there's proper supports there for our veterans who have suffered from the side effects of long-term use of mefloquine. Mike asks, what will stop companies and employers from dropping their paid sick time and associated costs now that the throne speech has offered 2 weeks paid sick time to workers? So the 2 week sick time, first of all, let's remember this is part of the deal with the NDP and the Liberals. Secondly, it only applies to federal crown corporations, the federal government, and to federally regulated industries such as the transportation industry, meaning planes, trains, and ships. So there is some private impact on this, but there is now a way to offset some of those costs. The federal government has taken on that cost rather than the employer. So in the case of federal crown corporations as well as the federal government, those dollars always came out of the taxpayer's pocket anyway. But for the other private industries that are impacted by the federal jurisdiction, there will be an offsetting the cost where the federal government will be picking it up. Now, some of these details are still coming through in regulation. And I would hope, and this is where we need to continue to have this dialogue with the government, is that this would only fill in unpaid sick leave that isn't covered by the companies to start with. So if they have a sick leave policy, if they do have that, 1.25 day or 1.5 days per month that you can build up as sick time, that would still be in effect first and foremost before the 2 week sick leave would kick in. Paul asks, what are the Tories prepared to do to lower our carbon footprint? Agriculture could be a huge carbon sink, but no one is talking about it. Livestock feeding can be altered, but no one is talking about it. Well, thanks for that question, Paul, because I actually addressed this briefly in my reply to the speech from the throne. And what I said is farmers were only mentioned twice in this throne speech. Once on the supply management side, that they would be properly compensated for any lost markets or loss of market share because of free trade with Europe or the United States. Something the Liberals have been promising for 5 years and have yet to actually cut a check on yet. But we need to honor that. And secondly is they mentioned it in the standpoint of climate change. And instead of looking at agriculture production as a way to reduce carbon emissions, as a way to ensure that Canada is doing its share to get to net zero at some point down the road, they are talking about helping farms transition to the new regulatory environment that's going to come under these Liberals to control fossil fuel use and carbon emissions. If you look at the amount of grain when it is put into storage and shipped away, that's all a carbon sink. We know that grasslands are great carbon sinks and pulling carbon out of the air even at a greater rate than some of the forests of the world. And yet, the Liberals still see agriculture as a problem. They want to ensure food security, but they don't want to reward producers using something like the ALICE system, which has been used in PEI in parts of Manitoba, the alternative land use strategy, which is that you actually reward agriculture producers, whether they're cattle operators, bison, whether they're grain, oil seeds, or horticulture, you reward them for using best practices in reducing carbon emissions, to protecting the environment, doing things that is in the public good. And so, aside from food security being a public policy, protecting our natural landscapes, using agriculture production to take carbon out of the environment would be a public good, and producers should be paid for that. So I do thank you, Paul, for that question. And, Liberals continue to go after, the things that sell in urban centers, and people that don't completely understand how agriculture works, or what's happening out in the rural parts of our great nation. And, you look at that, and you have the Liberals today announce that they're going to actually be banning single-use plastics. Some of this is good stuff, but they're taking away stir sticks and grocery bags, plastic utensils. I don't know why we're going to, eat anymore without plastic utensils for takeout. Plus, you're looking at plastic straws, and I don't know how many of you have ever used a paper straw, but it's no fun to have a milkshake when you have to use a paper straw. So I think we'll all be looking at making use of glass and metal as straws, which is definitely more environmentally friendly, and more that we can take out of our landfills and oceans are a good thing. So Keith asks, will the Conservative MPs and Leader O'Toole do something about racial intolerance comments on their pages? It is not your page, it is your page, not up to Facebook, and the ultra-right has no place. So be responsible for your page as Conservative MPs. And I can tell you that I have first and foremost, I don't allow rude and lewd comments on my page. Anything that is considered intolerant or racist is immediately taken down. I do have somebody that monitors my page to ensure that any hateful comments, hateful speech is not tolerated on my page at all. It's a big job, but I have a great staff people that do that for me. I wish everyone would, but we are trying, and I can tell you that within caucus we do go over this a number of times. Another Paul asks, what are you doing for truck drivers who put their lives on the line daily? You talk about frontline workers, and truck drivers are frontline workers as well, but do not receive any of the bonuses paid like other essential frontline workers. So on the wage top-up that was offered by the province of Manitoba, essential workers was administered through the province, and truck drivers were eligible. So all truck drivers could apply for it. Plus, under the CEBA, the Canadian Emergency Business Account, that was set up for those dealing with COVID, truck drivers could also apply for that $40,000, and the first $10,000 doesn't have to be repaid back. So there was money there as well. So I would hope that truck drivers or small business owners, most of them are either own their own trucks or on contract to drive trucks, they all would have qualified for that $40,000 CEBA loan as well. So I do recognize that truck drivers are part of the front line, along with people that are working in our retail sectors, our grocery stores. My wife and my daughter are both nurses. They are front line. And all I can say to each and every one of you who have been out there working throughout this pandemic is a big thank you. You have taken on risk, but you have kept the wheels of the economy turning, even though we've hit some bumps along the way. But you have always been there to make sure that Canadians are fed, Canadians are cared for, and the services and supplies that we need are there when we ask for them. And if you look at it, everything from people who are working in meat processing, excuse me. You look at everyone that was working in meat processing, even though we had some spikes and plants were shut down temporarily, including Maple Leaf and Brandon and Cargill out at High River, JBS and Brooks, Cargill in Ontario. All of those operations are running just about at full capacity again, even the poultry plants in Quebec. And so, food is still coming forward. Businesses and people who work in those industries have figured out how to make it happen. And again, we have to say thank you to everyone that has stepped up, done their jobs, and taken on considerable risk to do that. Got a question here from Terry from Sandy Hook, and he asked, particularly talking about Highway 9, about getting the speed limit reduced through Sandy Hook. And if you go down Highway 9 out of Winnipeg Beach and up to Gimli during the summer months, with all the cottages being there and all the extra traffic, it is reduced, but then it picks up again in the fall and winter months. And he said that it has, quite a bit of problems with accidents during the winter, especially that it is quite a bit of turns and corners in there. And he's also saying there's no passing lanes on Highway 8 or 9 up to Gimli. And for all of us that live in the Interlake, we realize how busy Highway 8 is in particular, and Highway 9, and even Highway 7. And I'm just used to Highway 7 up here in Toulon. And during the summer months, with the large number of people that have their cottages up in that area, traffic from Winnipeg, especially on weekends, is very heavy and very dangerous. And so the more that we can do to have, passing lanes and double highways, when we can twin the highway like we have Highway 8 up to past St. Andrews Airport, that ultimately makes things safer and allows traffic to flow much more efficiently. So we have to make sure that, those concerns are expressed. And unfortunately, highways are provincial jurisdiction. And so I suggest to Terry, you need to reach out to Derek Johnson, who's your MLA. Derek's got an office in Gimli. Make sure you stop and see him or send him an email, as well as write to the provincial minister responsible for infrastructure, which is Ron Schuler, and his office is in Oak Bank. Now, both of them, of course, have offices at the legislature in Winnipeg. So my office will send to you the contact information for both Derek and for Minister Schuler. Both are good friends of mine, and raise your concerns. And of course, I'd encourage you for some citizen action on this, is get a petition. Give it to Derek to table in the legislature and have people in the area, Gimli, Sandy Hook, Winnipeg Beach, Petersfield, have them sign a petition, asking for changes to the highway so it's safer. I'll say the one thing, and it's a credit to our provincial government, is that Highway 9 as well as parts of Highway 8 have been upgraded in the last few years, and they've done a great job. And having that, the wider shoulders, the paved shoulders, the new asphalt, as well as the seal coat on top, that has made those roads a lot more safe, in my opinion, and definitely a lot nicer to drive on. Now, Robert asked, what is the Conservative opposition doing to stop Trudeau's Liberals and the NDP from total economic destruction? Well, We do have a democracy, and we will have an election at some point in time. The NDP will not be able to sit in bed for a long period of time with the Liberals, especially if it's part of their corruption cover-up on we and whatever other scandals that are out there. So we do expect to see at some point in time the NDP walk away from their support, and that this Liberal government will fall and Trudeau will have to face a new election. Essentially, we want to make sure that as conservatives that we will address the economic shortfalls. We will hold the government to account. We will ask the hard questions. But at the same time, under Aaron O'Toole, we are going to offer a new alternative. We are a government in waiting, and we don't expect Canadians just to hand over the levers of government to us without having a strong plan on exactly how we can, recover this country, stop the social reengineering that is happening under Justin Trudeau, making sure that we get our books back in order, and that we have a nation that we can all be proud of. So we will make sure that we deal with that. So James is asking about the bill that's coming before the House right now. It's just been tabled on conversion therapy. We are looking at this legislation. There needs to be some discussion about exact definitions of what conversion therapy is. We want to make sure that parental rights and religious freedoms are protected. But let me just say this, is that it is completely wrong for anyone to be threatened because of their sexuality. Nobody should be ever demeaned or degenerated. So that has to be, of course, the centerpiece of this, but, making sure that people can talk, parents to kids, and, pastors to youth, those types of private discussions have to be, should never be criminalized. But anything that comes down to, coercion, anything that comes down to, bullying, anything that comes down to over the top, threats, those harmful practices, that the real disgusting parts of conversion therapy should definitely never be allowed to happen under this society that we're all proud of now. So I'll just say this. I think we're been talking for about 40 minutes now, and my throat's starting to get a little raspy. If your questions ever got answered today, make sure you write in, and we'll get an answer to you. Talk to my office. You can always email us at james.bazan@parle.gc.ca, or easier is just office@jamesbazan.com, and that comes right into our office in the constituency. Ottawa@jamesbazan.com goes up to the Hill office, so you can always reach out that way, and we'll always do our best to answer all the constituent email that we get. If you've enjoyed this, let us know. Get back on the comment section. But you know what? This is an interesting time, working virtually from home. Today's my last day in social isolation because I was in Ottawa 2 weeks ago. I'll be going back to Ottawa in about 10 days time. So, and every time I come back, I have to isolate, just like everybody else does when they're traveling east. So, it makes for interesting times working from home. But I can tell you that I still, as my staff, are doing everything we can to continue to support our constituents, support the great people of Selkirk and Lake Eastman, and indeed, in my role as Shadow Minister for National Defence, stand up for our Canadian Armed Forces, as well as our veterans. And they served us, and this is my chance to serve them. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.